Whose bright idea is this?
Everyone, every single one of you has been blinded by headlights at night. It's become one of those common headaches of driving, like traffic jams or people who camp in the slow lane. Drivers just know that these bright white LED headlights are no good. But here's the thing. Not every white headlight is LED. Not every LED headlight is the one blinding you. So what's the real cause? Is it a certain type of LED? A certain type of car? Is it a problem from the factory, or does it stem from owners somehow? I'm gonna run you through everything you need to know about LED headlights, how OEMs and owners alike are messing this up, and why it seems like headlights are becoming more dangerous for everyone on the road. Electric headlights have been available on cars since the 1800s. They were powered by 8-volt batteries, and as early as 1915, we even had dipping headlights which utilized a lever to change the dipped low beam setting to the unobstructed high beam setting. These were sealed beam headlights in which the bulb lamp and focusing elements were all part of one package. By 1940, sealed beam headlights became standardized, and vehicles from completely different companies would use a consistent and widely available sealed beam headlight like the 7-inch round one or the 5x7 rectangular one. While these standardized sealed beam headlights were cheap and simple to replace, they presented a problem for manufacturers, especially when aerodynamics and fuel economy became more of a priority. The standardized shape meant that you couldn't optimize airflow and drag around the front of a vehicle, the main place you need to consider when looking at aerodynamics and fuel economy. One of the things I think people don't appreciate about sealed beams was how they forced automakers to make very deliberate design choices on cars. Constraints breed creativity, as the saying goes, and some of the most iconic American designs of the 20th century are iconic because the front ends were built around sealed beams. In 1983, it was Ford that convinced the government to approve composite headlights. These were multi-piece lens and bulb constructions, which meant that the headlight could be conformed to the construction of the body of the car. It also meant that each car could have a bespoke headlight design, and replacing the bulb was still kept affordable with the usage of standardized halogen bulbs. But the thing about halogen bulbs is that they're not very bright. The average halogen headlight only puts out about 1,000 lumens. Later technology like high-intensity discharge Xenon headlights could produce up to 8,000 lumens. These headlights were first introduced in 1991 with the BMW 7 Series and slowly became more common. They are recognizable for their bluish tint as the arc-based light skewed higher in color temperature. We got pretty in-depth with color temperature in our video about why our street lights are turning purple, so for my fellow lighting nerds who haven't seen that yet, the link is right here. Skip ahead to modern LEDs, and they're often putting out 10,000 lumens or more, with some aftermarket LED bulbs being advertised as high as 60,000 lumens, which sparks a burning question. What are lumens exactly? The simplest way to explain all this is that lumens are the measurement of the total light output an emitter is capable of. This means light in every direction, and the more you think about that, the more you realize that doesn't actually matter for headlights, because headlights point in one direction. If you hold a light meter up to a lamp, it won't be able to tell you how many lumens that bulb is putting out. It'll give you a measurement in lux. Lux is a measurement of the amount of light falling on a surface. Think of it like sound decibels, but for light. And anyone who's ever tried to figure out if their exhaust is state legal or not knows that the decibel level changes depending on where that cop is standing. Which is why, even though bulbs are advertised in lumens, the actual laws around headlights are written in candela. I swear I'm not trying to make this complicated. It just is complicated. Candela is basically lux at a distance of 0. So something like a laser could have a very low lumen value, but a very high candela value. Despite lumens having nothing to do with how headlights are actually regulated, there's a shocking amount of misinformation around how many lumens halogens make versus LEDs, or even how many are allowed. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration introduced regulations using candela in 2007 as part of the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. FMVSS Standard number 108 is a nearly 200-page document with dozens of examples of how headlights must have specific candela outputs at specific measurements. This includes angle above and below the headlight, and also left and right. And in fact, this document includes output minimums or maximums for just about every light on a car. The problem problem is the enforcement of that standard. In fact, the NHTSA asked manufacturers to self-certify. And we all know corporations are really just fantastic with the honor system. And maybe I'm being a little harsh. Just because manufacturers aren't actively narking on themselves doesn't mean they're intentionally making headlights brighter, right? I mean, where is the incentive for that? Well, it turns out that incentive actually does exist, and it comes from the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety. The IIHS began including headlights in their safety evaluations in 2016. A good IIHS safety rating is very important to manufacturers when it comes to selling a car that people trust. Many people won't look into the safety of their next vehicle purchase beyond seeing that it's an IIHS top safety pick. And let's be honest, your average buyer probably won't even do that. But nevertheless, a good IIHS safety rating is a feather in the cap for engineers and a buzzword that marketers can use to sell yet another crossover SUV. When it comes to headlights, the IIHS has specific tests that boil down to how far down the road a vehicle's headlights can reach. They basically drive the vehicle towards a light meter and grade the vehicle higher the further away that the light meter starts to read 5 lux. To the IIHS's credit, the test does include point deductions for how the headlights affect oncoming traffic, but only on a straight level road. In the real world, roads can have bumps or curves that put your eyes right in the hotspot of those oncoming headlights. Auto leveling systems or swiveling lights can help correct for that, but they don't counter it entirely. But this is the thing. Even though more people feel like they're being blinded, the IIHS does have data to back up their tests. Vehicles that received a good headlight rating were 19% less likely to end up in a nighttime crash. The IIHS stated that there's no significant evidence to say that glare contributes to crashes, but regardless of an independent institution's findings, it's the responsibility of the lawmakers to actually enforce the standards that they've laid out. But even if the NHTSA started to get all militant about headlights of cars that haven't made it to dealership lots, it still wouldn't address another large part of the problem, and that's aftermarket lights. Remember how I said lumens don't actually have anything to do with how headlights are regulated? Well, that's not entirely true. Lumens are often how bulbs are rated, and if you swap your halogen or xenon bulbs for higher output LEDs, that's going to affect the candela rating. Online marketplaces like Amazon are absolutely littered with cheap, high output LEDs that are easy to swap into any headlight fixture that's in a sealed unit. Even the old steel beam style can be replaced with LEDs these days. And as always, the aftermarket is the absolute Wild West. There are some reputable companies that make expensive but well thought out units that attempt to comply with NHTSA standards. And then there are others that slap together something that fits if you're happy to do a little cutting, and who knows which direction those lights are pointed. Beyond that, you've got a whole mix and match problem. A factory bulb in a factory housing might be completely different from an aftermarket bulb in a housing from a different aftermarket manufacturer. Then there's the fact that the original spec of the headlight is based on ride height. And when you start to think about every lifted truck you've ever seen, the math falls apart real quick. In the US alone, aftermarket lights are a multi-billion-dollar industry. From conversion and retrofit kits, to off-road lights, to aesthetic mods, to people who are just trying to replace a bulb with a quick Google search. And once that vehicle has left the factory, no one's really checking what those lights are doing, just as long as they're on. On top of all that, some aftermarket LEDs introduce a technical problem which hasn't been an issue before. If you think about a bulb with a filament, the actual source producing the light is very small. This makes it easier to create a hard cutoff and avoid the light spilling out. Some LED replacement bulbs are actually made up of multiple chip-on-board LEDs. This means that the light-emitting source is larger, which makes the roll-off of the light softer, especially in housing designed for halogen or HID bulbs. It'd sort of be like using an influencer ring light on the front of your car. That oncoming semi-truck driver might be blinded, but boy does he look pretty. So what can we do to correct this? Well, we can do what Europe and much of the rest of the world is doing and finally allow ADB headlights, which stands for Adaptive Driving Beam. It's a f***ing game changer. Instead of a headlight projecting a solid beam of light that hits whatever's in front of a car, including your retinas, automakers can now use active shutters or a matrix of tiny LEDs to fluidly control how and where the light lands. The systems can track the locations of oncoming cars in real time and block the light from shining on them while still illuminating everything else around them. Complicated? Yeah, but it's incredibly effective, and so far it is the only shut and dry solution to making night driving less painful in the age of super bright LEDs. The problem is that just like with composite headlights, which were on the road in Europe 30 years before Ford lobbied for them in America in 1983, this country is behind, and we're not catching up. ADB tech was straight up illegal to put in cars here until the NHTSA finalized a rule allowing it in 2022 after a 10-year campaign launched by Toyota. That rule change cracked open the door for us, but just barely. Because the thing is, the regulations and testing requirements the NHTSA finally cooked up are too different from the SAE standard used by the rest of the world. And automakers have said it will take years to re-engineer their ADB systems to meet US standards, if they bother with the expense at all. I mean, it's not like we're going to stop buying cars until they do. In the meantime, a number of imported luxury models are being sold here with the adaptive beam technology installed, but without the software to make it do anything other than a fancy light show when you unlock the car. In fact, there's just one automaker that's figured out how to offer it: Rivian. It was able to do it in large part because the timing of developing the second-gen R1T and R1S that launched this year lined up with the evolution of the NHTSA rule as they completely redid the vehicle's software architecture. For now, seeing one of those on the highway at night is the closest an American can get to experiencing how the rest of the world drives after dark. But just like how the IIHS is trying to do what it can by taking glare more into account in its safety ratings, it will take even longer than automakers say for us to feel a real difference at night, with the majority of cars being developed or equipped with these new standards. The average vehicle on the road today is 12 years old, and that number has been increasing every year because, let's face it, we can't all afford new cars. So basically, the reason people are being blinded at night is because headlight regulation has been so loose and vague that it never kept up with the increasing technology. And when they finally tried to rectify that, they were so ham-fisted in their approach that it's almost impossible for companies to comply. And when companies are actively being rewarded for installing brighter and brighter headlights, it makes sense that the oncoming traffic is going to be blasting your retinas with the power of the sun. So stay safe out there on the roads at night. And as always, thanks for watching.